Writing is about the process. It's about listening and recognizing remnants of your story in the stories of others. When we share our stories with each other, we share the resonance of the human experience. The By Firelight podcast is your invitation to join our circle, a circle of writers, poets, seekers, and storytellers as we capture our living in words. This multifaceted living with joy, grief, love, growth, and loss is shared among us in your legacy, your story. The things you choose to do with your days as they unfold matter here. I'm your host, Betsy Delzer. I'm many things, but in this gathering, I'm a painter, poet, and writer, and I'm honored to be your guide through these episodes. Together, we'll find our muses in the rich and heart-expanding conversations with incredible guests, many who are like minds and all outrageously inspiring hearts. When you press play, you're here in the circle to share this space with us. By Firelight. Emma Brady is a 17-year-old singer, songwriter, poet, and passionate advocate who just graduated high school and is already making waves with her powerful voice and inspiring message. Through heartfelt lyrics and moving poetry, Emma explores themes of identity, resilience, and hope, using art as a platform for processing her lived experiences. Emma embodies authenticity and purpose, inspiring us all with her wit and wisdom. Emma Brady, I am so excited that you're here right now.
I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, before we even begin, the best part of this, besides the fact that you are my first younger guest and kind of teen feature, thank you so much, is that your mom was my first podcast guest ever.
How exciting. Full circle.
Full circle. 1 year later, we have the next gen on. So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
That was a year ago?
Yes.
That's wild.
I know. There have been so many chapters written since, so it's just wonderful to have you here. I'm wondering, right, you're a little closer to your younger self than most of my guests, but if you were to consider a little sparkly Emma that I knew when you were little, or if you want to look ahead and think of yourself in the future, what would your younger or older self want to say to us right now?
It's a really good question. Let's see. Well, I think my younger self would have a lot of questions. She was always very anxious, and I think my older self would say that I haven't changed much. I think I've always been the same person. Like, no matter what changes I've gone through, I've been relatively, had the same values. And I think my older self would be like, you're never going to believe this. Yeah, I think my older self would have a lot of stories, and my younger self would have a lot of questions.
I love that. So, Emma, you just recently graduated from high school.
I did.
Yeah. So you are embarking on a new frontier.
Yes.
How does that feel?
It feels so exciting. I graduated a year early, so it was sort of unexpected, but I hated high school. And so I think I'm just so ready. I know I was talking to my best friend the other day who I graduated early with, and I was telling her, I was like, MJ, like summer is coming to a close and I'm not dreading anything, is what I said, which is, it's interesting because, I feel like coming to the end of summer, there's always been so much anxiety and so much oh gosh, I have to go back to school. And this year there's none of that. I'm just excited to be and to see where this takes me. Even though I don't have a plan, I'm not worried about anything.
So I kind of want to go in two directions with just this topic because I'm curious about it as somebody who has dedicated my entire career to education and
right, yeah.
can also relate so much to working in a high school now where I can guarantee a lot of the students are feeling some of that dread who are coming back. I think the listener that I draw is a lot like your mom and I. And so I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit of a window, and it may go a little negative for a minute. So I want to be just we can be vulnerable and open to that. But what is it about school and high school that's such a drag that you would what would you be dreading?
I think, well, first of all, there's the people my age, which I don't know. I think I've talked a lot about just like in a bunch of different circumstances of how I've always felt relatively older than I actually am, which is difficult when you're surrounded by a bunch of people your age who are always like representing exactly what it means to actually be like 14, 15, 16, etc., you know? And I think there was just a bunch of there's so many different values going around in high schools, and I was never really like the partier or one to like fake connections just to fit in. When like high school is just so fake.
Mm.
And you could be like really getting along with someone and the next day you hear something they say about you. So there's that aspect to it where there's just like there is a lot of drama. And that's just kind of school in general, and that's just kind of life in general. But I think the thing that I really hated about high school was my specific high school's administration, because I was such I was willing to be like an advocate for the student body. That was very valued until it wasn't. I was leaned on a lot by my school administration, which I was completely fine with because I was very willing, and I worked with them a lot until there was a school shooting at a nearby school, and it was just silent, and there was just nobody who had anything to say about the matter. And you know, my principal hadn't sent out any announcement. No other administration had, except like a counselor, I think. But my principal had told him to not say anything because it like wasn't our place. But that kind of left a lot of people in shambles because they were scared, and this is the time to come together as a community, and nobody's saying anything. So I had a meeting with him, and he sort of brushed it off, and we really begged. We ended up having to bring it to the superintendent, which is when something actually sort of happened. But yeah, after that, we got like me and my best friend had gained the reputation of being disrespectful because we had disagreed. And it just sort of, I think high school is very much a rude awakening. And you're constantly being told, you know, like this education now is so you can thrive in the real world when you're already in the real world. And a lot of stuff goes down.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Do you feel like generally, I mean, I guess I'm hearing a couple of different things. One, on the like lighter, more superficial note, it sounds like just you felt a little bit like a fish out of water with the people in your grade or around you, where you just didn't see yourself mirrored as much in your classmates. But then also, and not that that's a superficial, but the more like that drama piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then also this kind of disappointment with the people who are entrusted with making decisions and having a platform and, you know, being really the true advocates and connectors. Did you feel like at some times that those adults were a little bit irrelevant or it made you feel insignificant somehow?
Yeah, I would say it's interesting because the fish out of water thing is interesting as well, because I feel like going through high school, it's almost like you're screaming underwater. And then the second that I got that like platform where like, oh my gosh, I am above the surface, I can like, you know, like work with making a difference, it sort of got shut down, which kind of leaves me in this little gray area of like, okay, so the adults in this school have failed me. I don't really relate to the kids in this school. So it just kind of left me feeling like sort of emptier.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the weird thing about high school is that you are going to be seen as a student first and a teenager first and not like a person by most people. And I feel like with teachers it's different. Like I really liked my teachers, majority of them. It was more like the head administration, which sucks because it's the school is being ran for you, and to feel like you don't have a voice in that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally relate to that. And I think, unfortunately, you know, I mean, it goes both ways in my mind. I think there's going to be times when you'll find, I mean, your heart is so beautiful and your mind is exquisite. And so the combination of those things moving into the world, there will be times when power silences you,
Yeah.
and it's, you learned it at a very early age because of your bravery. And that's the moment, I think, when you take the information that you gather for a even louder voice or an even louder message. You know what I mean? And now you
Yeah.
have that freedom ahead to look ahead and do that, which is amazing. I would love to talk just a little bit about the virtual aspect of all of these things. So both your platform, but also, you know, Emma, your mom and I are so close, and we also have really amazing memories of a life before the internet and before
Yeah.
social media. Some of the rude awakening, as you called it, of high school, how much of it is influenced by our phones and like the social media presence?
Definitely a ridiculous amount. And like as much, I don't know, me and my friends have had this conversation multiple times, but as much as you really want to push it back on like other generations and get defensive, it just really is that damn phone. Like I think the reason why people push back on it so much in younger generations is just because it's used as sort of a like a jab instead of like just something that's the truth, you know? It's like, oh, if you weren't on that phone all the time, but it's really just like it's just like people all together who have this like addiction to social media and like this phony aspect of life now. And, there's like so many studies. I mean, I learned about it in psychology this year that just like social media is genuinely detrimental for mental health. And as much as you can say, oh, there's good aspects to it too, like, yes, there is, but it's kind of just like an inescapable detrimental thing. Not to sound morbid, but that's kind of just like what it is. Which, if utilized in the right way, it can be better, but especially with like high school students with like developing brains and lots of feelings and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just posting whatever you want, it can get messy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there just was a simpler time when the processing of who I was and who I was becoming was like one dimensional. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was like the dimension of a voice and a phone call or a voice in person or presence, like physical presence. And now it's so multidimensional and multifaceted. And I've seen that from my like Gen X lens. So I can only imagine from your lens, if somebody's listening right now, whether it is an administrator of some kind or an adult who's just curious about what we're talking about, what advice do you have for the adult to think about relating to a teen? Maybe it's a child of theirs or a student of theirs. Like what should be in the forefront of their mind as they're coming to a teenager now, a current nowadays teenager?
I would say to not just, I would say, okay, it might sound like a little harsh, but a lot of times when you think you're listening, you genuinely aren't. And I mean, I think we're all guilty of this, but I think to think about it, to listen to what someone younger is saying and to take it with a grain of salt because, oh, they'll grow out of this. Oh, like I was that way when I was younger too. That's so, what's a good word for it?
Like almost condescending or like,
Yeah, it is. It's condescending, but it's really dumbing down like emotions that, or like situations that they're going through. And, I'm sure when they get older, most of this will be like, oh, well, but that is just like what happens with time. And, so what? Because they're experiencing it in this moment. So I would just say to not take things with a grain of salt and like really like just like listen, and to not listen with the intention of giving advice, but to listen with the intention of understanding.
oh, that's incredible advice. I recently had a parenting expert on, and that was what she said was in interviewing kids of all ages, the like 100% of the time, the thing that they said was lacking from the adults was listening. So you're exactly right. That's so spot on. One of the things that you have fostered, both in an online platform, but also just in the four walls of your bedroom or your home, is your poetry writing, songwriting, art making, that sort of thing. Was that something that just was always a part of you, or did it kind of come out throughout middle school or high school, or when did you start exploring that?
It's been since I was like really, really little, like since I could talk. I mean, I remember my mom, like every so often, like Facebook memories will pop up and it'll be like, Emma gave us a concert before bed tonight, and made up the songs as she went. And I was like 2 years old. But yeah, I mean, I think songwriting has always been a big part of me. And like, obviously, it started as like a little kid, sort of like, oh, I want to be just like Taylor Swift, you know? But it's kind of grown to just be the only way I can really get through things. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like the only way I can really process things is songwriting and poetry. And I've been very exposed to poetry because of my mom. So ever since I was little, I've also been writing like poetry and stuff like that. But yeah, it's sort of just become the way I think.
Yeah. Yeah, think out loud. Do you write like handwriting, or do you write in your phone, or what is your like method for getting the words down?
I've resorted mostly to my notes app, like that's my space. But I do have like notebooks full of songs and poetry and stuff like that. Especially when I was like bored in class, but I didn't want to be on my phone. There's just like pages and pages.
Yeah. Yeah. You're actually the first like singer-songwriter I've had on the podcast. And so I'm curious about like when you're writing a song, do you start with the music and then write the words, or is it a little bit of both? Like sometimes you have the words and then you write the music, or how does that work?
It usually, I mean, it's like everything, you know, I can have an idea that starts like in my notes app. I can have an idea that starts on paper with just like a little hum of like a tune. Or sometimes I just sit down with my guitar and I'm like, oh, that sounds really pretty. And then I like write according to that. It's just kind of like a mood I get in where I'm like, I just really am feeling, I don't know if it's like introspective or just extra vulnerable, but I just am like in the songwriting mood. And so, however that looks in that moment, like, oh, I think I had an idea the other day, like in my voice memos, or, oh, I think there is something in my notes app or in a notebook, or I don't have any ideas and I'm just going to sit down with my guitar and see what happens. It's sort of just depending on the day.
Yeah. Yeah. When you say that mood, I'm wondering if it's like similar to what some other artists talk about, is sort of like this flow state, Do you feel like you have to wait for that to arrive in order to create, or do you sometimes push yourself to do it even without that quote unquote mood?
It's both and, sometimes I'm like, oh, I really want to create right now. And I'm not quite in that like mood or flow state or whatever we want to call it. So yeah, sometimes I just like sit down. It doesn't happen every time, like sometimes I sit down with my guitar and I'm like, this is not happening today. So I do push myself to create as well. But sometimes I'm just not really in the mood for like months, especially if I'm very busy. And that's okay too. But then sometimes I can like write like 10 songs a week and it just like keeps happening.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that state like? Like when you're really prolific and it's just like flowing out, what does that feel like? Is it something where you feel like really energized, or are you just like, what does it actually feel like for you?
It's usually when a lot of terrible things happen in my life, like back to back to back. Mm-hmm. And I just like don't know how else to process it. And there's usually a lot of crying. But it always reminds me that pain can turn into something really beautiful if you just let it. And I think that's inspiring and helps.
Yeah. Yeah. When you listen back, or when you read back some of the words or the tunes that you write when you're in that kind of painful state and you're processing your pain, do you find that you are a little bit more removed from the pain, or does it pull you back in, or what is it like a healing experience? What is that like?
It is healing, because a lot of times I listen back and I'm like, I didn't even know I felt that way. Like, I didn't know that was underneath everything I thought I felt. A lot of times obviously when I'm angry, I mean, I know some books I've read. I'm trying to think who it was. It might have been Glennon Doyle or Brene Brown, one of the two, but there was a book talking about how anger isn't really an emotion, but it's more of a mask. And there's always something deeper underneath, whether it's like hurt or just like sadness or vulnerability, like something deeper. And I think that's always what I find if I'm like, especially like angry about something. I listen back and like the lyrics are just like, ouch.
Mm.
And it almost is like, I think after when I'm like listening back, I'm never completely drawn back in 100% because it's almost like I'm listening to something I didn't write because it just like happens so fast.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. I think, it's interesting how sometimes our mind will sort of hook onto some piece of information and it really influences us. I remember learning about anger and I remember it being called a secondary emotion.
Yeah.
And that same concept of like, right, there's something that's like an undercurrent below it. And when I think back to even the last week or month or season of my life, at times when I've gotten angry or, when I've seen my son get angry, like there always is kind of a starter seed that's buried beneath that expression of anger. And so I love that reminder that you're giving us. It's just incredible, Emma. I mean, I'm sure that the experience of our listeners right now who are like, this incredible human is 17 and newly graduated from high school, and you have so much wisdom and just such a beautiful heart. And I want to just say, congratulations on finishing high school, right? And on the next adventure ahead. Did you bring some things that you'd like to read or share so people get a taste of some of your work?
I did. Let's see. I think I'll start with a poem then. Let me just see. Right. Well, okay. I think a big theme for me throughout high school has been like growing up and, these like interesting aspects of, I mean, like even now, the opportunities I get just because I'm myself and because I'm young, I think a lot about that. And I think, I think a lot about like, yeah, I'm 17 now and everything I do is really cool now because it's mature and it's like something adults are usually more interested in, like whether that's advocacy or, like just feeling very deeply. I think a lot of my writing has become of that, of like, well, that's really cool, but what happens when I'm older and all of that is just normal and it's not seen as really cool because I'm not young anymore and it's not unique because it's just regular. So I wrote a poem about that a few months ago and it's called You Can't Blame the Botox. And I put this on my my TikTok and my Instagram, I think. So it's sort of about that. Okay, but this is how it goes. You hold much more power than you know while you're young. Well, then what happens when I'm old? What happens when my wisdom is no longer interesting because it is no longer spoken out of a child prodigy's mouth? What happens when I naturally catch your eye just because I'm the youngest in the room? Or when your ears don't find my voice because I have a fresher perspective on the world? You stopped putting our art on the fridge when we were old enough for it to become average. You didn't just stop creating. Because when you're young, you don't have to be the smartest in the room. You don't have to be the most interesting or the most talented or even the most eye-catching, because everything you say is profound if it displays you as older than you are. You can't blame the Botox when we're raised to devalue what aging does. That wrinkles are a sign of outdated material and embarrassing stories at family gatherings and pity when you eat alone at a restaurant or the wrong vote in the upcoming presidential election. You can't blame the Botox when we're raised to roll our eyes at grown-up generations, like the old model, like worn out, like obsolete, like out of date, but not vintage. No, vintage is cool because vintage is ours, because vintage is normal for outdated adults. But then what happens to us? No, you can't blame the Botox when relevance is scrabbled at in hopes that your time isn't up. You can't blame the Botox when you dig to be heard, even though you aren't fresh and new and rare. You can't blame the Botox when you cling to your youth, not as a midlife crisis, not as a reminiscent of the good old days, not as a the 20s are the best years of your life, but as a what the hell do I do now? I have so much to say and no one to say it to. I too will miss my voice, not because it will drop an octave with my aging or shake with my crippling bones, but because I will never stop having young ideas, even when spoken from an old mouth. So damn, you really can't blame the Botox.
Oh, I love that so much. Do you see an older version of you while you're reading that?
Yeah, I do.
So do I. Yeah, it really conjures that. That's really beautiful. Yeah.
So that's a piece that I really am drawn to. I really like that. That's very honest.
It's very honest. And what's really cool about it, Emma, is that I talk in the intro of this podcast about how stories are the resonance of experience and we find ourselves in each other. And that's what's so incredibly connecting about writing. And as you're reading, I'm like seeing a slightly older version of you, which I'm like sort of trying to morph in my like truly intelligent, not artificially intelligent brain. And I'm like, then at the same time, I'm also interpreting it for myself, which is like, that's the real power of your work, is that it matters to me right away in terms of I'm making it personal. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like right away, I'm like, well, wait, how do I feel about aging? And in some ways, I found myself wanting to say, oh God, you have so much to look forward to. Like,
Right, yeah.
you know, like I don't know. And other people may disagree. I'd be curious, but there are parts of my life that I'd want to go back to for like 24 hours, but I would never want to go back and like relive an era. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I like moving forward. It's one of those things where that's what it brought up for me. It brought up such a rich landscape of ideas and thoughts and processes. So beautiful. Good work. Are you going to share another?
I have multiple.
Yeah.
However many we have time for.
Okay.
I have something that's sort of along the same lines. There was, I think, I'm not quite sure where this sparked from, but I think it was around the same time, just thinking about how adults will tell me that I have so much potential. And I think that's a really interesting thing to say, because I think that's a really interesting way to tell someone you are not everything that you're going to be, but also to tell them there is a limit to what you can be. And I know when I was thinking about this, what came to mind, there's a segment of an interview, Taylor Swift, on her like Disney Plus folklore, like sort of documentary thing. And she's talking about the conversation of potential and what that really means. And I think it's just very odd, the fact that as humans we tell ourselves that there is a way to reach your full potential and there's like a stopping point. And I think that was interesting. So I was thinking about that when I wrote this. So it's called Potentially. There must be a moment when we lose all of our potential. When everything everyone has ever seen in us comes crashing down in slow, silent chaos. Maybe it's on our 18th birthday, when we are legally grown and by law are now an adult. Maybe it's at our high school graduation, when we finally meet the real world we were always warned about. Or maybe it's when we turn 21, when we are truly an adult and now can drink away our problems while still following government rules. There must be a moment when we're told, oops, sorry, time's up, you didn't match your possibility fast enough. That's it, that's all the time you've got. You must now live the rest of your life under the habits you have formed. But let me lower my voice for a moment. If I tell you a secret, can I trust you with it? Because I think, and listen closely, I think all of my wasted potential will come crashing down in exploding, burning decadence. I think if it is on my 18th birthday when it all goes up in flames, I will rise from the ashes like a vibrant, seething phoenix, or simply a child, taunting, I told you so. I think if it is at my high school graduation, when the caps come raining down among my graduating class, I will not slip out the back door in an attempt to take the attention off of me and my melted possibility. But I will jump on stage and declare that I am lost, owning it with pride and grinning through your shock. And so I think that as I turn 21, when I am truly an adult, as I lose all that I could become, you will not watch me lose my mind, but instead you will watch it all come back to me. Slowly and surely, as I unwrap all the shot glasses I have been gifted as presents, I will simply fill them with apple juice. And I can feel you asking why. I can hear you sitting in silent wonder, and I am not one to leave you in uncertainty just today. It is because all of my crashing, dying potential will finally free me. It is because though I have not found the cure for cancer, I have lost a loved one to it. It is because though I have not come into a sudden passion for rocket science, I have loved and loved and loved to the moon and back. It is because whatever anyone sees in who I could become, it is not who I am. Who I am able to grow into is for God to decide, and you lie when you say you see my wonderful possibility, because it is not there. All I have is all I am, and all I am is worth it all. Join me, will you, in this blazing city of lost decorum. Let us cause an avalanche of destructive potential and leave it all in ruins.
Wow. I had moments seriously where I was definitely on the verge of tears, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to bawl through this. And then I had moments where my viscerally felt like my heart was just like ripping open listening, like I felt a very deep drum beat. that's an amazing thing to be able to carry someone through with your words, Emma.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, I know we have lots to choose from, but is there anything else or any other piece that feels like it needs to be on this particular platform or space?
Okay, so this is a song which I wrote about the situation at my school where there was that school shooting and it was not brought to a space to be worked through. Actually, the counselors in my high school, they're not, I think it's interesting, they're not trained to deal with school shootings or address anything like that. There's no training. And I just think it's a big problem. And me and my best friend left my a administrator we really trusted. We left his office that day bawling after he had said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, when we were asking him to please address someone, do something. He had said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And so we left. I had a panic attack and we got my psychology teacher. So this was about that. And I wrote a song called Say Something. And it was just sort of processing that betrayal. So the lyrics are, I wonder, are you doing this on purpose? Like thunder, you got loud just to get nervous. Undercover, broken promise, promise to care. You promised to care. An achievement. What a good grown man you are. Disagreement. Dramatic teenage girls get shot. Can't believe it. Right in my face you sat and stared when I said I'm scared. Maybe it was stupid to hope that your morals would tell six figures no. And you'll grieve my potential, like it slipped down the drain when I begged you to say something. Give me a moment, and let me archive all my logic. Now we're golden. Let's speak as politicians' projects. I'm so broken. Disrespectful because I disagree. No, that makes sense, Mr. Degree. Maybe I misunderstood your joke, you acting against what the statistics show. Just a high school girl I am to not know that I'd trusted you when you promised to say something. Leave it to you to bend the rules till your paycheck's on the line. Then you're out of your mind. Leave it to you to play it cool till your hands are tied, even if students could die. And I swore up and down that you were different than the crowd. What a waste of my time. What a useless disguise. And I bet on your vows. I thought decency was allowed. I was proven wrong twice. Second chance killed my pride. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, now I'm the fool. Now I'm the fool. You played a high school girl. How does it feel? Does it repair what you've lost when your face showed your thoughts and we begged you to say something?
Powerful.
So that's probably one of the most honest songs that I've written in a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Your honesty is first and foremost. And it's like, the craft that you have with words is just incredible. It's so inspiring. As we come to a close, you mentioned TikTok. Where would you like people to find you?
You can find me at Emma Brady Music, all lowercase. That's my TikTok and Instagram handle. Yeah, those are my main platforms.
I love it. Is there anything, there may be a couple friends of yours listening. There may be parents, teachers, administrators. Anything else that you want to say that we haven't spoken about, or something to leave us with?
I would say that empathy is dying in this country, and that it is beyond important right now to try your hardest to see where someone is coming from and to meet them where they're at in conversations that you might be disagreeing in, or conversations that might not make sense to you, and that humanity is always going to be first. And it's the one thing that actually unites us all.
Emma, you are wise with words. I won't even say, that funny phrase, wise beyond words. It's not beyond. You're wise within words, and such a soulful person. Thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation, and really the inspiration and the drumbeat that has started in me is going to continue. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
By Firelight is a Lit Path Studios production and is produced by Jamie Gale and Betsy Delzer. Music is by Legito Music and Pond 5. Thank you for being a part of our beautiful collection of stories.